appreciate it if you would stop Rob Taylor from blathering on and on.
Opinions expressed by the talk show hosts, callers, or guests on the Rob Taylor Report do not necessarily represent the opinions of the hosting platform, subsidiaries, sponsors, or possibly anyone else on the planet or the known universe. From the tinfoil and lead-lined broadcast bunker on the beautiful south coast of Oregon, it's the Rob Taylor Report. So strap yourself in. Your political therapy session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the nearly famous Rob Taylor.
Hey, Coos County. Hello, Oregon. Hello, America, and beyond. And I want to thank you all for joining me today. I've got, this is one of my irregular shows, and as a new regular person, we have to do this from time to time. And so I've got a really special guest on today because we are in the middle of these special district elections. And so, of course, anyone who's running in a special district election is a special guest. And so we have a special guest on who's running for the Bay Area Hospital. And I'm going to let him tell what position he's running for, who he's running against, and give us a little information why. And joining me right now is Brandon Saada. How are you doing, Brandon?
Good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. No problem. And I almost feel guilty that I'm taking up your time on such a beautiful Wednesday morning.
Yeah, I normally would be outside right now with my son doing some sort of gardening or something. That's true. But it's okay.
Do you live in the city of Bandon in the city of Coos Bay, or are you kind of outside?
Actually, I am literally right behind the hospital. The big 60 acre land right there. I'm inside of it in the Milner Crest area. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's kind of cool.
So I'm reminded that there's a hospital there every time a helicopter flies by.
Yeah, it's on the coast. When I first moved here, that was something that I living in the big city, we're used to helicopters flying over the neighborhoods nonstop all night long. And here it was so quiet, it was hard to sleep. But anytime you do hear a helicopter, someone's life is being saved. Literally, that's the only reason there's probably a helicopter up in the air. And
and I mean, on that segue, I was an ER trauma nurse. So I spent many times going up on that helipad, taking patients down, pushing the limits on trying to save their lives. So I spent 10 years as an ER trauma nurse and critical care nurse, care management nurse, OR nurse. I did a little bit of infusion. I did some education too. So I know hospitals, and I was a travel nurse for a vast majority of those. So I went Connecticut, where I met my wife when she was a chief resident. She was coming down, admitting patients. We both spoke French. So we were talking to a patient in French, and then we realized, hey, we both speak French. I'm originally from Virginia. I worked there. I went down to North Carolina. I've been to Colorado, and I've worked all the way here. And I've seen a lot of different hospital systems, and I've seen a lot of different managers. I've seen a lot of different CEOs. And so my experience in the healthcare field is that I have seen it. I've been it. I've experienced it.
From what I know from ER nurses, and I used to have a couple of friends who were ER nurses, they would have the most interesting stories. That's for sure, because this was in a major metropolitan area, and just incredible stories. But the work and the training that anyone has to go through to be in the ER, you're talking 24, 36-hour shifts. You're talking, incredible amount of pressure, making just life-saving decisions within minutes, sometimes even possibly seconds. So you're someone who's probably very well tempered in dealing with very stressful situations, wouldn't you say?
I don't panic at all. After what I've seen, you can't panic. I don't have that flight fight response like most people do. Most people either freeze up or they run away from a situation. My
Yeah.
immediate response is go to that moment and deal with that moment right then and there. And I do the same thing my entire life. It was a perfect fit for me.
Let me ask you, as a child, did you want to be involved with this type of work in this field, or because it sounds like you're someone who would be attracted to those type of action jobs? Am I just not reading that right?
No, I mean, weirdly enough, my dad was a immigrant, so I'm the first generation of my father's family to come here, and he owned a boating business when I was a child. But before that, he was like a watermelon salesman in New York, an electronic repair guy in New York somewhere. And he is originally from France, but he was also in the Israeli Navy.
Oh, wow.
So maybe I got a little bit of that from him, that calmness. He never seemed to panic either. And it's probably because he lived through the 6-Day War. He lived through the Yom Kippur War when he was a child. He had to hold he had to hold the key to the bomb shelter on his neck, because you got, any given moment you had to run to a bomb shelter when he was living in Israel. Even today.
Yeah. And I couldn't even imagine living in that type of scenario. It must be, well, I imagine there's a whole country living with PSTD in a way. You know what I mean? It's like they must be living in a way that it's just terrifying.
It's definitely different, and that's my family. That's my dad's family. They all still live in Israel. I still have an uncle in France, but for the most part, they all live there.
That's cool.
Yeah, that response is, I think some of it's just natural for me. And when you went through nursing school, you had to do rotations. You had to go to OB, you had to go to peds, and I did actually do pretty good in peds. That was my second choice. But when I did my preceptorship, where you're following a nurse around and you're still a student, I impressed the management so much in that ER that they just hired me right out of nursing school. And that's not very common. Usually you have to go through some sort of step-up unit. You have to get some experience before they stick you in the ER.
Yeah,
but
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very good under stressful situations because I seem to flourish from it. It makes me get better almost.
It's true. It does hone your skills, and it's a sign of someone who is a professional and can take on very serious problems. And that's what brings me to my next question. Why are you running for the Bay Area Hospital? And what do you think you're going to achieve if you win that position?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I didn't really want to do it at first. I got recruited from a doctor and a couple other people, and they said, hey, our hospital is really struggling. There seems to be nobody who stepped up to do the board. And that's true. When I went to my first board meeting, one of the first things those board members said after I gave my little 2-minute public speech was, there's just nobody else running. Nobody seems to care. I'd be happy to give up my seat if somebody else would just run. And they got mad at me for implying that they need to make different decisions, because I questioned their choices on accepting quorum without talking to the public. And that's the first meeting I went to. Was they did that letter of intent, signed it, said we're dealing with quorum, we're going to make this happen. Now let's talk to the public about it. And that seems backwards. I thought we were a representative group here. I'm pretty sure you were supposed to talk to the public first, ask them, do you think we should go with this quorum deal? Do we have alternatives? Does anyone else have any ideas? Then you could sign it. But it was the exact opposite. And I kind of took it personal. I said, that seems weird. Why are they getting to decide for us? I get that they're elected representatives, but we didn't vote for them to do this because we didn't know it was on the table when we voted for them. So this should have come down to an election. And I stayed on the border. I didn't quite say I was going to run, but I organized a group of people. I got with a group of people. At this point, I can probably start spitting names out. Our former mayor, John Briggs, Dr. Herbis, a bunch of these people that you're probably seeing them on Facebook talking about this stuff. There's more to that group than just those two. But they convinced me that, you know what, Brandon, you understand this topic. You're involved in the solutions. Maybe you should run. And I waited till like the last day, almost the second to last day, to really put my name in the ballot. And actually, the day before the deadlines, my opposition for position 4 is Arlene Roblin, Arnie's wife, who has a significant history in everything except for healthcare. I mean, that's the fact. She's very experienced. I mean, I don't know why anyone wouldn't vote for her if this is the school board. Right? Like school board, she'd knock me out of the park. But when it comes to the hospital, I don't quite understand why she's running for hospital. So she called me to explain she's more concerned about the HOPE program, the children's programs, because she's concerned it might get cut. And that's the serious issue with Quorum. Quorum is this Wall Street conglomerate. They keep calling it a healthcare partnership, but they're no longer a healthcare partnership. I could give you a quick rundown on who Quorum is if you wanted.
I would actually, and explain to people how Quorum came into this. That's you kind of let's go back to why the board wanted to bring Quorum in even before they made this decision without going to the public. Do you have any backup information on that?
Only from what I was told by Troy Cribbins in the board meetings and board minutes, and through him directly, was that over the last several years, finances and outlook looked poor, and that they decided that they needed to form some sort of partnership. So I think they used a Juniper advisory consultant. That's the other thing. The hospital uses a lot of consultants.
Yeah.
And they've gone through several consultants. And that's always a big red flag when your administration and CEO are using consultants because they can't do it on their own. And that's kind of what this is that they sent this letter out to supposedly 30 plus people. And the only people that really showed interest were Peace Valley and Quorum and maybe another one, but they don't really give us the facts. They haven't presented any of this information to us because it's confidential. And then they said that Quorum was the only one left on the table. But when you look at who Quorum is, in 1989, Quorum formed themselves as a management firm, as a buyout from HCA, which is a huge conglomerate. Then they got bought out by Triad and expanded their network. Then they got bought out by CHS, expanding more. And then CHS spun them off as a separate company, giving them 38 hospitals. And they spent a ton of money. I believe they incurred $500 million in debt, doing all these service expansions and just injecting into the hospitals. But now they only operate 12 hospitals. So they went from 38 to 12. They also declared bankruptcy. I think it was 2021, 2023-ish.
Oh,
and
wow.
a total of, I don't know, I think it's 6 hospitals have closed. Now, when you ask Troy, he'll tell you only 2 hospitals closed. And the reason he says it like that is because 2 hospitals have closed post-bankruptcy.
Right.
So the bankruptcy Quorum is a different Quorum than the pre-bankruptcy Quorum, is what they try to tell everybody. But the fact is the Quorum we're working with right now is privately owned by Davidson Kipner Capital Management and Golden Tree Assets Management, which are both Wall Street firms. They actually, Kipner Capital Management also does real estate, I believe. And there's actually a whole slew of different things with that. So the reason I don't like Quorum is because they're not a partnership. They're not a healthcare partnership. You know, if we teamed up with Peace Valley, Kaiser, Mayo Clinic, at least they have doctors and nurses that they could send over to us. But Quorum is 100 people staff, and none of them are healthcare workers. All of them are management. So really what you're doing is you're asking for a hospital that has probably 40% administrators to add another 100%, another 100 people that are administrators.
Right.
And then you're asking for them to solve our problems, and we have to pay them a management fee of anywhere from 3 to 5%. My understanding is it's 3%. But let's say they inject $100 million into us with a 30-year lease that gets renewed every 10 years. They're going to want that return. You're going to have to make somewhere around $200 to $250 million a year to pay back at 3%, $12 million management fee just to break even after 10 years. And that's not including our $46 million debt.
And well, let me ask you: I have no idea what the hospital runs through. Is that even possible for that just sounds like a lot of money for that hospital.
I mean, in 2018, their total revenue was $187 million. At peak, we were sitting at $211 million in somewhere around 2020, 2021. But that's when Brian Moore got hired. 2021, we just start going downhill. It's like we go from having $189 million in net position to now currently $77 million. So we have, under Brian Moore's wing, lost $111 million. They like to say two things, if you listen carefully to the argument. They go, Brian Moore's doing a great job. He's turning things around. Yeah, we dropped, and now we're kind of stagnating. And so they're claiming that stagnation is 100% Brian Moore, right? But it's the same part of the argument is we're in a financial crisis. It's not our fault. And then they start going down a list of things that they want to blame. Medicaid, Medicare reimbursements, COVID. It's happening all over the country. So what we got here is we got someone who got into a car accident, and they're blaming the rain. They're blaming the oil when everyone else is also driving on the same road. Right. There's no accountability. It'd be one thing for me if they said, hey, Brian Moore and this current board, we don't have what it takes. We need help. We're hiring quorum because we can't do it. That'd be a somewhat acceptable argument. At least they're holding themselves accountable. Right. At least they're admitting that our administration, our management can't handle this. We need someone else to come in and do it for us. But they're not saying that. And that's my biggest problem with it is you've got to take accountability. Brian Moore should not be rehired as the CEO. And that's what's happening with the quorum deal. He already makes close to $600,000 a year. They've given him pay raise after pay raise. I think it's technically $580,000. I don't know the details. He gets bonuses. He probably gets some sort of other payout because the guy, I believe, I don't know if it's true, but his housing's paid for also.
That wouldn't surprise me.
It's part of his compensation package. And, you know, they say that he makes less than 50% of the average, but I mean, we're talking about rural hospital here. He should not be making massive amounts of money. He doesn't need to. Troy Cribbins, even in the meeting minutes, says the reason they gave him a raise is to help with cost of living. The guy could pay for 5 different houses and still have enough money for cost of living. So the whole thing just stinks.
Yeah, if you can't live on $600,000 a year, you may want to try that. That might be a clue right there that this guy can't be managing money. So going back to quorum, you talking about the amount of that they would have to make to be able to pay, and I forget the figure you give. If they're only going to make the $174 million, they're already in the hole, isn't that? Wouldn't that be the case?
Yeah, I mean,
amount, you're already in the hole.
We owe the bank money, right?
Yeah.
And now quorum comes in, and they're going to inject more money. We're going to owe quorum money and the bank money. Now, I don't know what they're doing because everything's behind contracts, right?
Right. It's executive, and it's in executive committees behind closed doors.
Yeah, so we don't know the exact details of that contract, and that's the frustrating part too, is why are we engaged in some sort of partnership that doesn't allow the community to engage in a community-owned hospital? And you said at the beginning, this is a special entity. If this was a private hospital, this would be all fair game. 100% do whatever you want. Bring in a core manager if you think you can. But this is a community hospital. There's supposed to be a community involved in it.
Right.
They didn't start this hospital so that we could just hand it off to somebody to make decisions for us. Originally, a special entity is more than just a hospital. The way I understand a special entity is supposed to operate, it's supposed to be an economic engine. It's supposed to be the heartbeat of the community. It's supposed to provide more than just Band-Aids and cardiac caths, right? They're supposed to be supplying jobs. Every item that hospital buys should be bought locally. There's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't be buying our beef from Coquille cattle, Myrtle Point cattle. Every dollar spent should be back into Coos County economy. If we have a laundry department, we should be doing it here.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Because like you said, yeah, it's part of the engine of the local economy. Totally.
Right. And Quorum is the exact counter to that. Quorum is saying, hey, we'll make you make profits. We'll make you make money, but you got to give us a cut. And so they're extracting any profits that this county could be having. Let's just pretend for a moment that they allowed us to make $10 million that we never made before. If we were capable of making $10 million, we could be reinvesting that $10 million into our economy. But instead, Tennessee gets it now. Their pockets get filled. And that's my problem with outsourcing in general. This is what it is. It is outsourcing. That's what this comes down to. We're outsourcing management now. We were outsourcing orthopedics. We're outsourcing anesthesiology. We're outsourcing laundry. We're outsourcing food. We're outsourcing almost half that stuff. This is supposed to be a community hospital. We shouldn't be outsourcing it. Billing should not be outsourced.
Right.
There's no reason why we can't make a cooperative system like it's SWAC. Like, let's just say Chris Castleman or something gets on in the SWAC board, and we could talk to him and say, hey, could we make a pipeline that trains nurses, trains CNAs? Because we have a pipeline issue. We don't have doctors. We don't have nurses. We don't have staff. We don't have billing. We could team up with SWAC and create a system where we team up together. We could team up with the high schools. We could team up with the middle school kids and just get them interested. Just like you said, did I like nursing when I was a kid? I knew nothing about it. But hey, if we get these kids interested in it early, there's a lot of evidence out there that says getting little kids to play with elderly people is good for their health. I mean, there's so many alternative solutions. There's so much reinvestment we could be doing. The market, the food market that we do every Wednesday, which I believe we'll have a little stand there set up today, but that could be done at the hospital. There could be it could be filled up in the parking lot. We could be doing it inside the hallway. I mean, there's so many options. It's just incredible to me that they haven't explored them.
And sometimes the community hospital, the community hasn't been sometimes, like you said, included, or sometimes we don't feel very welcomed. And it's sad because it's a great facility. It's something that benefits the community. I know my family business has benefited from having that hospital there. But one of the things that I want to go back to with talking to Quorum, you were a registered libertarian. I'm a registered libertarian, and usually we're free market guys. We like to see, the free market handle this, but this isn't really that situation. This is now what they're doing is they're taking a taxing district that pays for the hospital. The hospital is funded by the community and by the state and other sources, but it's not privately funded so much as a private hospital would be. So we're paying into that, and then we're thinking we're getting it managed because we're paying $600,000 to this gentleman who's managing it, and I'm sure he has a whole staff and all that crew. And now they want to bring in more management on top of this, more administration, and it's almost like it proves the point. Like, government just can't manage anything, and now we have to go to the private sector. But it's really still not going to be a private sector hospital. It's going to be a quasi of the both, isn't it? That just doesn't seem like it's going to be a private
public partnership is kind of what they're trying to create, right?
No, you're spot on. Like there's this problem in life that we've been encountering all over the nation, is these binary solutions.
Mm-hmm.
Either, let's go full government and let the full government take over, or let's go full Wall Street and let Wall Street take over. But I'm asking, just like you're asking, is a parallel solution. The as you put it, the libertarian solution is the third option. And the third option is that we use our awesome capitalist system and we use it here locally. So we take the alternative solutions and we create a regional healthcare system with the other hospitals. There's 5 other hospitals, critical access hospitals in this area. We form a partnership with them and we create our own version of quorum, right? We take advantage of the fact. Yeah,
that would make total sense right there. And you get someone who's effective enough to manage that type of conglomeration. Yeah, that would be great, which kind of leads me to my next question, because this is what my mother-in-law told me that I didn't understand, because I really haven't been involved with this at all. This is something I've totally been on the sideline. And so she was telling me she doesn't want quorum to take over because of the fact that she believes that they will consolidate the hospitals in the area, that they would take over Coquille, they would take over Bandon, they would take over the other hospitals in the area and close half of them down. And that's how they would help raise money for the one hospital, by consolidating it and consolidating those patients to one area, the Coos Bay Area Hospital. Now, was that off? Am I off there, or what's going on with that?
Well, I guess the problem is we don't really know what quorum's going to do. You could say this, that you have this giant, powerful industry. I mean, this billion-dollar company putting their foot here. And I know, like, let's use a non-hospital analogy. Like, let's say a giant hardware store like Home Depot came in and just dumped themselves in the middle of this town. Companies like Fars and all the other local hardware stores would struggle.
Right.
That's true. So the chances are pretty good that if quorum comes in here and does such a good job, that it may squeeze out those other hospitals. It could force those other hospitals into difficulties. I can't predict that. But what I can say is that I don't even want to deal with it. I don't want a billion-dollar industry putting their foot in this town and then getting to pull around, because they will have a lot of heavy lifting. They will be able to say to those critical care accesses, yeah, no thanks. They'll be able to push them around because they have the money.
Right.
They could easily squeeze them out. They could use their own vendors. They could use their own. I know they're using their own medical charting system, which after the debacle of that $35-50 million Epic system that has cost this hospital and local clinics a lot of money, now they're going to just dump it and find a new one. It's like, man, the decision making is going crazy. I mean, there is a fear factor. Quorum has lawsuits all over the country where little tiny critical care access hospitals and have tried to sue quorum because of that very thing. They can cause a disruption in the healthcare system. They can.
Totally.
When really they would create a competition. They would. It would be a competition for who's better. And this billion-dollar industry is going to be stronger than the 5 acute care hospitals put together. And my solution is that we should be forming a unified medical pack where all of us work together and don't compete. And that includes our local IPA, the Advanced Health. That includes Bay Clinic. That includes North Bend Medical Center. I'm talking everybody who's healthcare related should be in a partnership together. We shouldn't be competing.
And that would make it better for your patients.
It would make it better for everybody. We should be treating patients like they're individuals, not like there's some stock market ticket on a ballot or something, because that's what quorum's going to do. They're going to look at the numbers. They're not going to look at individuals. They're going to say, hey, how can we make a profit in this ER? How can we make a profit in this med-surg department? How can we make sure those nurses do their job to make sure we can bill and make money? And hospitals have to make money. I do have to bounce away from that big argument that people keep saying, oh, we can't have for-profit in hospitals. Well,
You kind of have
we
to.
We have to make money, but we have to do it in a way that's not taking advantage of the people that we're treating. There has to be a give and take. There has to be a balance. Again, this can't be binary.
I'm an optician, optical technician. I worked with doctors. I managed a doctor's office in Albuquerque, and one of the things I always tell people is that the reasons that boob jobs and eyeglasses are so cheap today is because government has stepped back from those two medical parts of the industry, and they have been able to flourish. Now, when I first started in the eyeglass industry, you would have to go to a doctor. You would have to order your glasses. It would take 2 to 3 weeks. It would cost you $300 or $400. Now you can get those same glasses for $69, and the exam is free. See, and that was how we making money. And we had to make money because these, like I said, the guy who does the boob jobs, the guy who works on your eyes, they work for a private company. They work for a private industry. They have to make money. And yet we were able to make money and still grind down to the point where we were offering the best deals I've ever seen to the customer. And that's what I would like to see with the hospital type of thing when you're talking about this, joining them together as far as a conglomerate here locally without going outside to outside sources, because like you said, that's going to bring in a whole other level of administration, a whole other level of competition. This just seems like it's going to cause a huge problem. And from what I'm taking, what you're saying is that there's a group of you who are running kind of like a slate, who are kind of fighting against Quran. And then there's a group who are kind of running as a slate who are pushing this idea. Do you kind of want to give us the difference between your guys' side and the other side and what they are proposing?
Yeah, I mean, Troy Cribbins, along with Arlene Roblin, are 100% for quorum. Like, Arlene has never publicly admitted it because she's a very experienced politician.
Yep.
If you listen very carefully to her words, she believes it's a good idea. It's not a coincidence that Troy Cribbins is going to appoint her position 4 until the ballots are counted, until the election. She will be holding that position because she's friends with Troy. So, of course, if Troy is so pro-quorum, she has to be too. Renee is also going up, and she's currently on the board. You won't see a sign for her anywhere as far as I know. But she's on the board, and she also is pro-quorum because she's the one that voted for it originally. So we have Dr. Uno, who's going against Troy Cribbins, and Dr. Uno is no quorum. He does not want quorum. You have me, Brandon Saada, going up against Arlene Roblin, and of course I'm anti-quorum or no quorum, and she's pro-quorum. And then we have Kyle Stevens. You might know him from the Port Commission.
Yes.
He's a no-go for quorum also, and he's going up against Renee. And then that last position's where it gets tricky. There's 4 people. I believe it's Mark. Is it Mark Daly? I think, and
I can tell you, it's Mark Daly, Darren O'Brien, Timothy
O'Brien,
and Simon Alonzo, who is also running for the CCAT. So
So when I first started all this, I wanted to find all the other candidates who were anti-quorum, and I know for a fact that Simon is no quorum, and Simon holds a really nice experience in sort of business operations, and that seems what's sort of lacking. And I don't think a board should be all the same. Like, it wouldn't make sense to have 5 nurses on the board. It makes sense to have these diversity. So having a doctor like Dr. Uno on board is wonderful. You get to see things from the doctor side. Troy's a physical therapist, but he's not even practicing anymore. He just runs his business, which is the only PT hospice in the hospital. It's his business.
Oh, wow.
So you can take that as what that is. You have Arlene, who's friends with Troy, and I don't really understand Arlene's motivation besides the fact that she doesn't want the kids program in there. She has no medical experience. She has lots of other experience, but like I said, you need some people who understand healthcare at this point. We're at a drastic point.
Right.
Kyle Stevens, that guy did so much work with the SWAC and some of the nursing programs and different workforce things. And he seems to know everybody. He has already helped me engage with some of the other CEOs. We've had conversations. We talked to him. He talked to them. I talked to them. And we've sort of already laid down the groundwork for this alternative solution. And I could tell you this, they are excited about the prospect of even getting the conversation started because they're struggling too. And this would be helpful for them. But as far as I understand, nobody has approached them or even considered this idea. That last position with Simon, Tim, and the other four, I mean, at this point, I would have to go with Simon. And if I could create another position or maybe fill one in, I'd probably throw Tim Lynch in there too. Because, it's good to have a backup.
Yeah, and like you said, it's diversity. Here's what I see happening. And I got out of the medical business years ago and got into the political business, which is the opposite of the medical business. Medical business is about science. It's about facts and figures and such like that, where politics is about emotion, persuasion, being able to convince people to your side. And I've been talking to people about this Bay Area hospital, and I haven't been able to tell them the situation. I just been able to tell them, these are the people who are running, who are against the quorum, and these are the people who are running for the quorum, and you'll just have to figure it out. But most people don't even know that. They don't know that there's kind of a slate going on, whereas in SWAC, you have a distinct two different slates of people who are running. And that's where you may have a weakness in your guys' campaign, because I see what's going to happen is that you're going to have a split board. And if that happens, it's going to be quite interesting when you guys get on the meetings, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, you need 3 people on this board to stop a vote.
Right.
But you need 4 people to get something done.
Right.
Yeah, so it is tricky, and I anticipate there's going to be some trouble if only 3 of us get in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine that's probably what's going to happen. I know how it works around here.
So we really need people to vote for Dr. Udo. We really need people to vote for Kyle. We really need people to vote for Simon, and of course me. But if we want something to change, we have to go out there and vote. There are not many people voting in these elections. It's like they don't seem to care as much. I believe Troy won unopposed last time with only 4,000 votes.
With only 4,000 votes, and since it's a special districts election, the average is 36 to 38% of the voting electorate will be able to get out, and that's nothing. I mean, if you compare that with the overall community, that's probably less than 10% of the people deciding for the rest. And it's
that's why we need new voters. We need more people voting this election than we've ever had vote before, because this is a turning point for the hospital. It's either we go down this route or we find a new path, because we can't keep going with this board anymore. We can't keep going with the CEO.
Let me ask you, are we at a disadvantage, partly because we're a rural area and we're way out here in the middle of nowhere? It's hard to get people, professionals, nurses, other medical professionals, doctors out here, partly because of housing. Housing alone is a huge problem. And are we having more problems as far as a hospital because we have an aging population here in the South Coast? I think the average age in Bandit is 57, and you know what I mean? It's like we're getting old quick. And I think that may be contributing to a lot of the problems with the hospitals. I don't know. Does that, because you have Medicaid and Medicare?
No, you're spot on. I mean, the problems we have are not being solved by quorum. So like you said, quorum are not going to be able to bring in more doctors to this area, because why do the doctors want to come here in the first place? What motivated my wife to come down here? In her situation, it was a J1 visa. And Northern Medical Center used to be the number one visa person in this town. I don't know if that's true anymore, but that's the reason we're here. And
Oh, wow.
I stayed here because I love the small community concept. But I know a lot of doctors who have left the area because it just wasn't a good fit for them. And so a cultural change is very important. And when you bring a company in like Quorum has a reputation of burning their staff out.
Yeah.
As in, they believe it's cheaper to just rehire staff than it is to keep the staff you have, because they push them so hard to make profits that the staff get burned out. And that's one of the reasons I left nursing to begin with, is I got burned out.
Yeah.
When you worked in the ER, at some point, some of the ERs were all about numbers. It wasn't about taking care of patients. I could remember a story where there was this homeless guy. He was in a bed, and that section was closed. I didn't need that bed. No one was going to go in that bed. I just let him sleep in there. My charge nurse comes flying down the hallway, getting all mad at me because she goes, "Why is that person still in that room?" I said, "He's just sleeping." Right? I'm like, I'm taking care of these other patients. I'm just letting the guy sleep. And she got all pissy and mad about it. And I was like, I'm sorry, but I thought I was doing the right thing here. She, it's a whole story about, you got to get him out so he could, make money and prove that he wasn't here anymore, because every minute he spent here. So it becomes a problem. But like you said, we have an aging population, and we have to find different solutions. And that's part of why I believe the workforce initiative, getting schools involved, means that we have a younger generation of people that are interested in creating healthcare and creating careers, because children leave this town because they have nothing here. But if SWAC was offering a nurses program that's more than LPN, and we got kids excited about being nurses, that's a career. And you have a guaranteed job. We have a hospital. We have 5 other hospitals. Could you imagine if we were supplying all the nurses for all those hospitals? None of those hospitals would have problems with staff. And, not everyone's a nurse. So some people can be CNAs. Some people can be medical assistants. But the idea is that we need to create a reason for people to come here. And if we have this giant healthcare model, a giant healthcare system, a thriving school, we'll bring people here. We'll change those dynamics. We'll change those populations. And if people want to come here, the housing market will get better, because with people comes like we bought this house. Yeah, we bought this house, and it's taken us 5 years. I don't know if you can hear the banging. We have a local plumber downstairs fixing up the bathroom, because that bathroom had really, really old, I don't even know the name of the color, weird colored tiles with weird colored toilets, weird color sinks from like that 1960s, 70s. And,
that's what I grew up with. Yes, I can see it now. Yeah. Yes, yeah, that green, lime, ugly. Yeah, the colors from the 70s. They were naturally chemically made, I think, because they were definitely not part of the regular spectrum. That's for sure.
And so, just like you said, all those problems don't go away with Quorum.
Right.
None of those actually even address the problem. They don't even look at the problem. I mean, maybe you could make the argument that maybe a doctor might want to come down here because they know they're going to get a big pay raise. Maybe. Because Quorum can afford it, but at the same time, Quorum's supposed to be making money. They can't make money if they're hiring doctors and staff at a higher rate than the hospital can make.
Right.
They're not changing our demographics. Some might make the argument that they can negotiate with the insurance companies a little bit more. But to circle back around to what you said, it's Medicaid, Medicare. That's government regulation issues right there. That's a deeper problem that we have. We become so reliant on these systems. And then when they're not providing to us, what do we do? And so what I'm proposing is we create a parallel structure that does not become reliant on outside sources. And we should be able to create a system where our community is self-reliant. We shouldn't have to rely on government money. We shouldn't have to rely on it. Yeah, it's going to be there. People need it. But we should be striving to constantly create a system where we're not dependent on any one source. I mean, I do permaculture growing. I have multiple species of apple trees. I have multiple species of my radishes, my lettuces, because if something comes in and wipes the whole crop out, I have a backup.
Right.
And that's how we should be operating in the whole world too. We shouldn't be relying on one single source, because the moment we rely on one source, if that source disappears, what do we have? Nothing.
You have nothing. And then they've got you over a barrel, and then people can just walk in and do whatever they want because you're in a desperate situation. And that's the last place we want to put our hospital, in a desperate situation. Going to a little bit different direction. I was at the commissioners meeting, I think it was last month, and we were talking about quorum, and we were talking about this race, and the commissioners were excited about quorum because they were saying that if quorum comes in, that the hospitals would have to pay taxes. Now, I don't know if that's true, because it sounds to me like this is going to be a quasi-private public thing. So I'm not sure if the commissioners were right on that, but I don't know if you've heard that argument going around.
I heard the exact opposite argument, is that the reason the quorum deal got delayed for up to 6 months is because they're trying to switch to a tax exempt status.
Oh, I wonder if the commissioners know this. Yeah.
Well,
see?
that was the most recent change, because this quorum deal actually should have happened months ago. It was only, the letter of intent was only for 90 days, and that was back in July.
Okay.
So this deal should have been signed already, and this board election shouldn't have mattered, because they were going to get rid of this board position as it exists, and their vote wouldn't matter.
Right.
My position when I got on the board would have been a contract watchdog. But from my understanding, they changed it because they wanted to be able to do there were some tax exemption issues. They were talking about, you can go back to what Troy said at the public forum,
Right.
something about trying to change it to be a quorum, be a non-profit type deal. Because the truth of the matter is, they're for profit, and we were a different tax bracket. And so I don't even know if they could have gotten this deal done with if they wanted to. I think that they might have screwed that up, and they don't want to say anything to anybody because it's embarrassing.
Right. Absolutely. And then once again, it would show the incompetence. Right.
Yeah, but rather they reframed it as, oh, we're actually trying to do it because we listened to your concerns. If you say so.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. Yeah, totally. That just ticks me off, because the commissioners are all glad handing each other, saying, oh, this will be a great deal because, they'll be paying taxes, and, they're desperate for money. And now I find this out. This makes a lot of sense. Troy Crippen's wife is Melissa Crippens, who is an expert on dealing with taxes and tax entities and districts and such things. So she's very good at finding these type of loopholes, or getting people into a situation where they are considered a nonprofit and stuff like that. So I could, yeah, this, which makes sense why Arlene Roblin is running as well. They have a political action committee. It's called Coos Forward or something like that, Coos County Forward, something like that. I forget the name of their pack, but yeah, it sounds like this is part of some type of behind the scenes deal that you and I are just not privy to. And that's even more scary.
I don't even know. That's the problem. I don't know.
Right.
I do know that isn't Troy also on the city board?
Yep. Yeah. And they would benefit if a hospital paid taxes. So it's kind of interesting what he's telling the city.
I honestly don't know any of that information, because again, most of that stuff has to be private and confidential. Yeah. I guess you can ask Arlene and ask Troy those harder questions if they're willing to answer them.
Yeah, I could. I doubt they'll come on my show. You're one of the few. There's only a certain few who will come on the show who are brave enough. And that's because I will ask them the same questions I asked you, and I don't think their answers are going to be the same that what you're giving. You know what I mean? I can already feel the runaround if I ask them these questions. But
well, your intro music can be kind of scary for some people.
That might be it. Yeah. Okay. I'll turn down the Megadeth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either. It's a new day and age. You're a young man, and it's nice to have younger people with a family who seem to be dedicated to living in this area. It seems like that's what your goal is, and that's why I wanted to talk to you. And I'm definitely supporting you. I'm voting for you, and hopefully that other slate will get in. Not the other slate, but the slate that you're on will get in.
Yeah, so just to remind everybody, John Uno, Kyle Stevens, Simon Alonso, and myself, Brandon Saada, because we have to make a difference. We really want to find Brian Moore a new job, because I think it'd be great for him to flourish somewhere else.
Yeah.
But he can hop on his private jet. He can go anywhere at any time he wants.
Yeah, he can. Yes, he can. Well, is there anything before we get out of here? Do you have a website that you want to tell people about, and anything you want to let the listeners know before I get you out of here?
Well, I have my Facebook page where I've been doing most of my communication. And if you go on there and just type in Save Bay Area Hospital, you should see us pop up. My little logo is the heart with Save Bay Area Hospital. There is a website that's sort of dedicated to not quorum, but it's not technically my website. It's like savebayareahospital.org. And, there's other ones out there that all talk about why quorum's not good. You could do your own research and look at NIH. They talk about these for-profit entities and how there's so many negatives that the only thing the current board and CEOs and administration seem to want to talk about is this cash influx, and they want to keep talking about the crisis. They want to use Hegel's lovely, here's the problem, here's more about the problem, we'll solve the problem for you, solution-based concept. The fear-mongering. We can't be afraid. We need to be brave, and we need to say we can fix this on our own. We don't need an outside agency to do it. The solutions are here. We have the community. We can do it. Even if it's going to be through charities at the beginning to get us through the tough patches, but we have to build a new culture. We have to create a society and a county that wants to be involved, and that has to take all of us to solve this problem. If we want this hospital to remain a community hospital, it's got to be a community solution. It can't be an outside solution.
Totally agree. Hang on for a minute. I'm going to sign out here. I'm going to take you off the screen, and I'm going to sign out, and I'll come right back to you. Okay. So
thank you very much.
And thank you for being on. I appreciate it. That was Brandon Saada. I hope you do vote for the young man. I think he's going to be an incredible asset to the board over there at the Bay Area Hospital. And I think it's going to be very interesting how this turns out. So, you know what I say, folks, you got to keep fighting. You got to keep doing what you're doing. And, we'll keep doing what we're doing here. And so until the next time, you know what I always say, carry on, Coos County, carry on.